Today, we're going to dive into a command from the deep past. You know, it's one of those instructions that, when you first read it, seems really strange, maybe even a little unsettling. But, as we're about to see, it's packed with a hidden language that tells us so much about devotion, intention, and faith. So, let's start decoding.
And here it is, right from the source. The instructions are incredibly specific, right? 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs. They have to be perfect, a year old, without a single flaw. And the whole point of this? To create a pleasing aroma for God through something called a burnt offering. It's a really stark and demanding instruction.
So, what do we do with this? Is it just some dusty old law that doesn't mean anything anymore? Or is there a deeper message kind of hidden inside the words? Well, we're going to treat this like a puzzle. We'll break down each one of these mysterious phrases to unlock what it really means. Okay, our first clue is the main event itself, the burnt offering. To really understand the whole command, we have to start with what this ritual actually represented to the people who were doing it. Now, the source material makes it clear this wasn't just any offering. A burnt offering, or žrtva polyanitsa, was a huge deal, one of the most important sacrifices you could make. And here's the key detail. The entire animal was completely consumed by the fire. The person making the sacrifice kept absolutely nothing for themselves. And right there, that physical act was a powerful symbol. Burning the whole animal wasn't about being wasteful. It stood for a total dedication of yourself. It was a symbol of complete devotion to God, where you hold nothing back. It was truly an all-or-nothing kind of gesture. This whole idea of total devotion leads us to what is maybe the most poetic part of the command. The sacrifice has to create a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Okay, what in the world could that mean? I mean, are we supposed to think this is about a literal physical smell, like God is enjoying the scent of barbecue? Well, the source material suggests there's something much, much more profound going on here. And here's the key to figuring this out. The phrase is what's called an anthropomorphic expression. It's a fancy term, but all it means is that you're using human-like terms, in this case, the sense of smell, to try and describe something about God's experience, which is, way beyond our ability to fully grasp. So get this. This was never about the smell of smoke. The pleasing aroma was a metaphor. It symbolized God's satisfaction with what was happening inside the person making the offering. Was their heart sincere? Was their faith real? Were they being obedient? The physical sacrifice was just the outward sign of that invisible internal attitude. And this brings us to that last really specific detail of the command. The quality of the animals themselves. They couldn't just be any old bull, ram, or lamb. Nope, they had to be special. The text is super explicit on this point. The animals had to be perfect, totally healthy, without any defect or blemish. And this wasn't just some minor detail, it was a non-negotiable part of the instruction. And you gotta ask, right? Why? Why such a strict rule? Why would the quality of the animal matter so much if the whole point was about what's going on in a person's heart? Well, it all connects back to a really universal idea about what makes a gift meaningful. Offering a perfect animal symbolized giving something that was genuinely valuable to you. It was about honoring God with your absolute best, not your leftovers, not something you were trying to get rid of anyway. It was a physical sign of an inner desire to give everything and to do it with respect. So we've decoded the symbols, but to really get why they were so important, we have to zoom out and look at the world where this command was actually given. Because, as they say, context is everything. See, this wasn't just happening on a random Tuesday. These instructions were given by God to Moses for the Israelites, who at the time were a wandering community, trying to figure out who they were after leaving Egypt. And this ritual was tied to a huge holiday, the Feast of Trumpets, which we know today as Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. It was a really important time for reflection, for renewal, and for the community to come together. And that community wasn't all on the same page. You had leaders like Moses, who was devout and obedient, and wise priests like his brother Aaron, who were totally supportive.
But you also had figures like Caliph, who was a doubter, skeptical, and could be pretty divisive. So in a group where you have both strong faith and strong doubt living side by side, having clear, powerful shared symbols, well, that wasn't just nice to have. It was absolutely essential for keeping everyone unified and focused.
So when we put all these pieces together, we see the whole picture. This law that seems so strange at first was actually a deep symbolic language. It was a way for people to use a physical action, a ritual, to express and reinforce an inner feeling of complete devotion, of sincere intention, and of deep commitment to their faith and to each other. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about. If these ancient rituals were all about making an inner attitude visible through an outward action, what about us? In our own lives, what do our modern actions, our traditions, our routines, even our own personal forms of sacrifice, what do they really symbolize about what's going on inside of us? What message are we sending?